What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to go over a little bit of Xbox news. I think it's only actually fair. I did 2 videos today, I think, on PlayStation, so a little uneven, and I have to apologize for that. But honestly, pretty big stuff. A lot of people doing like bullet point type things. Phil Spencer did a whole article on Bloomberg. I think he did another interview as well that I think is behind a paywall, but Bloomberg's also behind a everything's behind a paywall nowadays. So I want to go over the bullet points. Really, the main one I want to focus on is the handheld, because I think that's just freaking awesome. And then there's a couple other, I would say, pretty interesting things as well. So they are working on a handheld device, but it's still a few years out. So I think that's kind of gigantic. It's been speculated. It's been reported, okay? I mean, because it's been thought of where it's like, with the ROG or Rogue Ally, however you want to say it, with the Steam Deck, I really believe every company should have it. I mean, you could really say Nintendo, with the Switch, it made it possible to have them again, right? Because they went away with it a little bit with the Wii U, came back, and I think they just cemented, like, you can always have these. And for anybody except for Nintendo, it's not going to be their bread and butter, right? Like, you're not, the next Xbox, like the Xbox handheld, is not going to outsell an Xbox console, but it is going to be something that I think is worth getting if you're a certain type of person. And it's something, by the way, not to make this about PlayStation, because again, I already said we're uneven here. I think they should do a PS Vita too. They always tend to be somewhat ahead of the curve as PlayStation, and then they just squander it. So I think PS Vita 2 or another PSP Vita, whatever you want to call it, I think PlayStation should get into it, because it'd be very different, right? I think an Xbox One, like, not to be negative about it, but I do think an Xbox One would be very similar to ones we've already seen, whereas if PlayStation wanted to do it, I would hope that, because they've already done it before, they could do it a little bit differently than kind of the competition. But I'm all for it. Like, I think I would get one, to be honest with you. I would take an Xbox handheld console any day of the week. So that's a big one for me, and just kind of cool, because again, it's been speculated. It was rumored from like the Jez Cordons of the world and all that stuff, and then it finally, I think, it gets confirmed in such a weird way because it did blow up. Like, it is one of the bigger stories, I would say, of today, but it's not, I don't know. I feel like it would have been at like a presentation or a conference, but you haven't seen it, right? Like, I imagine in a year or two from now, like when they show it, like that's the big thing. But right now you get the confirmation that they're actually doing it. Okay, another one that you could argue is actually just as big, again, depending on the person, is that Phil Spencer talked about no Redline. There's no game that he looks at and says, nope, we cannot put that on PlayStation, right? And that is a very interesting statement, because, you've heard him say before about like kind of taking it case by case, and I really think they should be doing that, right? Looking at each game and saying, okay, what games really make sense to help us versus hurting us, right? And sometimes you don't know, like putting a Gears of War game on PlayStation, you don't really know. I'm sure you'd have some people that are very, aggressive that would say it would help them. I think you'd have people that are very aggressive that would say it would hurt them, right? You don't technically know until it actually happens. But this is a pretty interesting statement, because for a long time the rumor has been that, okay, there are actually he kind of dismissed the leakers and the insiders, over the last couple months, because there's been people that said no, like games like Gears of War, Halo always goes back and forth. I think the rumor would be like a Halo remake would be on PlayStation, but like the next Halo game would not be on PlayStation, right? But and that could still happen. The next Halo game might not come out on PlayStation. Fable, next year, things like that might not be on PlayStation. But at the same time, this kind of dispels, okay, you can never say never, right? I mean, and that in itself, by the way, that's a very weird phrase, I would say, in general. But that's what he's trying to get at here, right? Like, any game is fair game to be put on PlayStation. And it's just interesting. We've talked about it for a very long time. I am very interested to see what the future of Xbox looks like, or the Microsoft ecosystem, whatever you want to say. And I want to know, obviously I like surprises, so I guess I can wait for those, but I would like to know which of these really big games in the next 1, 2, 3 years ends up coming to PlayStation as well. So that's one. And then kind of smaller stuff. It sounds like, well, smaller, but again, depending on the person, you might be really happy. One of the things was it sounds like the layoffs and all that stuff are over, where like they got everything under control and everything's good. They also talked about acquisitions, and they said basically that large deals are probably things that are not going to happen, but smaller things might still happen. And they're looking for like those diversity reach out type things, China's market, some Asian markets, things like that, which honestly PlayStation has done a really good job of kind of capitalizing. And they have a head start because of Sony and whatnot. But I think that's just an interesting thing to say in terms of the layoffs and stuff. Yeah, I mean, come on, can we please? I think the industry needs to stop. But Xbox, Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard, all this stuff, there's been so many layoffs just from them. So you hope things are gonna calm down. Sounds like they will. And I do just find it funny that he kind of specifies, large buying things on a large scale are probably not going to happen. Smaller things maybe, because I would look at it. Honestly, if I want to look at it pessimistically, there's a few ways of doing it. Number one, they just bought two of the bigger ones out there, so at some point it begins to become very unfair, maybe even more than it already is, depending, I guess, again, on how you view things. But even like what they had to go through with like the courts and stuff, if you keep buying up some of the biggest publishers on planet Earth and you do it multiple times, I think eventually like a government would stop you, because you are literally buying them all, right? What are you supposed to say to counter it? So that's one thing. And then number two, honestly, I look at it where it's like, from what we kind of can infer, Microsoft is kind of sick and tired of this stuff happening, where they're giving money, they're letting these things happen, and it doesn't seem like they're like recouping that money. And then we hear these rumors where it's like, okay, they're really now pushing Phil Spencer, they're really pushing Xbox to make this money back. Hence why these games might be coming out on PlayStation in the first place, right? Like they need that extra money. So the more you buy, not just like does that give off a look, but also it's like, okay, well, you're spending even more money when it seems like you already have this thing where it's like, well, you've spent a lot of money, they want that money back, and then like now all these problems are occurring. You're going to do that again. You're going to lump on top of it. So yeah, it's probably best to put the foot on the brakes there of buying these huge studios. So that's pretty much all I got to say about it, I suppose. Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.